I'm Shireen. I'm with Defiant Science, and I'm here with Alexis and Jasmine today. We're going to share Jasmine's story digitally. We've been working on collecting stories for Defiant Science of women in STEM, and we're really excited to share Jasmine's story digitally, like in person, with you guys today. So Alexis, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
I'm Alexis. I'm one of the co-founders of Defiant Science, as you may know. I'm super excited to kind of take a different avenue with the stories. We thought that seeing the women in person or just being able to see them on video would be really cool because we get to talk to these women all the time, but we wanted to share it with everyone else. So we're excited to hear from Jasmine.
Thank you for having me, ladies. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate you for highlighting me.
Of course, we're excited to hear your story. Can't wait to share it. So getting started, let's go through what company you're working at or what you're doing in grad school, if you're still in grad school, what universities you attended, your title, if you have a title, where you're at right now, and if you have any Twitter, or Instagram, or social media platforms you'd like people to follow you on.
Yeah, so I work for Collins Aerospace, which is a strategic business unit of Raytheon Technologies. Collins Aerospace is a aerospace supplier for companies like Boeing and Airbus, Mitsubishi, Embraer, but now we're taking a pivot more into a military portfolio. So we're doing a lot of missiles and defense type of contracts now. I specifically am a senior project engineer and I work on special projects. The special projects role is a leadership development role. So I work directly with the VP of engineering and I help him with any type of engineering, business transformation initiatives, just engineering initiatives that affect the overall organization. And it's a lot of project work and a lot of like fast paced, drop-in work from the VP. And it's a very high visibility role where I'm overall helping the engineering community and whatever we need in terms of resources, tools, flow down, communication. And the role is for me to be developed as a leader. So I'm expecting to be doing something more, in a leadership standpoint in my next role. Right now, I am in grad school. I go to Purdue University studying interdisciplinary engineering. And I also go to Indiana University studying an MBA. So it's a dual degree program. I should be done this December, fingers crossed.
Yay.
It's a intense program overall, but I doubled up on classes. So I'm trying to get out as soon as possible because I've been in school for like 3 years now. And outside of that, I'm a co-founder of Greater Than Tech. It's a nonprofit to create the next business leaders of the future in technology and business for girls of color. And I'm doing that because I've always felt that engineering goes hand in hand with business. And there's not a lot of girls, especially girls of color, who are in this field. And, that's why I'm very happy that we're doing this interview together because we share that same sentiment. But there are aspects of engineering that tie well into business. And the idea is if you can do engineering, you can do business. Oh, and you asked for some of my social media handles. I'm on LinkedIn, so just Jasmine LeFlore. I just created a Twitter, so it's Jazzy LeFlazzy, JAZZY, and I am creating social media handles for Greater Than Tech. For Greater Than Tech, you can find us on Facebook right now, and then you can find us on our website, greaterthantech.org.
Awesome. So you heard that, ladies. You guys need to go and follow that. So I believe you've told us a little bit about Greater Than Tech. You founded the nonprofit with a friend, or are you the sole owner of that?
With a friend. So hopefully you guys get to interview her as well, Brittany Wheeler. She's my partner in crime, also an engineer, also an amazing person. And we just shared that same sentiment. Being women of color in engineering, it felt as though there weren't a lot of resources to get girls of color into engineering, and let alone business. She has an MBA as well, so we share that sentiment with the engineering and business.
Awesome. So yes, we would definitely love to have both you on to talk about that at another time. But first, let's get to your story. So we want to know how you began. Like, walk us through your journey into uh, college, and then trying to navigate where you are now.
Yeah, so this is pretty much like my glory story. I am from Flint, Michigan originally, and I always remember as a young kid just always being fascinated with airplanes. I used to live by an airport, and I would see planes, going through our flight path, and I would just ask my mom, like, how is this flying? This is so cool. This is like amazing. And I would always ask her, and all she said to me was, maybe one day you'll have a job when you'll know the answer to that question. So at, I don't know, 7, I'm like, I'm gonna figure it out. Like, and I've just always been an inquisitive kid. Like, I feel like I probably was annoying at some point because I always asked questions. But I was always pretty good at school, loved learning. Was always like a honor roll kid early on, and just kept that momentum. So when, my mom was like, maybe you can find out, I was really on that quest to figure it out. And then I went on a college tour in the 9th grade to the University of Michigan. And we visited the Aerospace department and the wind tunnel department. And the wind tunnel is, where they do all the aerodynamic testing of airplane parts. And, it's like the wind tunnel, you're seeing, all the little vortices over the product. So me in the 9th grade, I'm like, this is it. This is where I need to go. This is what I need to do. And from that, I kind of, had my aha moment, and everything after that moment was, how do I get here? So I've always enjoyed school, but I definitely put more emphasis on math and science. I joined the robotics club in high school, really enjoyed that. I did a summer camp in the 11th grade, engineering summer camp, and like it was a 6-week camp where you did like math and science and engineering classes and college tours. So I feel like I always prepared myself to go to University of Michigan and study engineering. But when it came down to ACT score and actually applying, I did not get into the College of Engineering at University of Michigan. I got into the College of Literature, Science, and Arts. So me in the 12th grade at the time applying to college, I was just really hurt, and I felt like, a failure, like, oh my gosh, I'm not meant to be an engineer. I've, done this summer camp. I've been on the robotics team. I'm top 10 students of my class. Like, I just didn't understand why. And I knew that University of Michigan was a very competitive school. And in aerospace, specifically that year, it was the #1 school in the US. So me, being a kid from Flint, Michigan, subpar type of school, not the greatest scores and not the best preparation for such a competitive school like that, I kind of felt like, who am I kidding? Like, why would I have gotten in the first place? And, I just didn't do well in standardized tests. Like, standardized tests, I feel like that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I took the ACT like 3 times just to try to, bump the score up and be a little bit more, yeah, like, get the bare minimums of what it takes to be admitted. And what happened is I ended up trying to do a cross-campus transfer where I was in the College of Literature, Science, and Arts, and I was going to take the prerequisites needed to transfer into the College of Engineering. And even outside of that, I had to start college a semester early. So I started college like the summer that I graduated instead of the fall, because the type of school I went to, I wasn't, fully prepared to just leap into freshman year of college. So they called it the Bridge program. And, a lot of students that were in that program were, from underrepresented areas and went to similar schools like me. So it kind of was, you needed a bridge to be college prepared. So, had to go through that program, attempted to do the cross campus transfer. And I mean, it's like a 2-year process. Like you have to take chemistry and coding and physics and Calc 1 and Calc 2. And I was not doing well in those classes. Like I still was struggling, barely passing. And on top of that, I was working a work study job. I was like sending money back to my family. So it never felt like I was going to get in because I had all these other barriers that I had to attend to. So then I went to the aerospace department to talk to the chair and just asked him, what would it take for me to be considered? I'm really passionate about aerospace. I went on this tour and I really felt like I wanted to be in the program. Oh, and not to mention, my advisor from the Bridge program, she told me I would never get into engineering because of, the school I went to and, all those types of statistics that say, who you're supposed to be in the world. So I told her that I would rather fail and try to do something that I'm passionate about than to just do a degree that I had no interest in. She was trying to get me to do a general studies degree and just graduate from University of Michigan. That was her bottom line. Let's get these kids in to the Bridge program. Let's let them, kind of be our data points that show that this program is successful, the Bridge program, and how about they graduate and we have more kids that came from these type of schools that have, graduated. So to me, I just felt like that's a slap in my face. I wanted to be an engineer since I was 7. So I'm going to at least try. So, when I went to the head of the aerospace department, he just says, hey, take an aerospace class, see how you do and see how you like it. And that's what I did. I enjoyed the classes and I was doing better in the aerospace classes than the actual prerequisite classes, like the math and the chemistry. But I had...
That's usually how it goes, right? I mean, that's the subject matter that you want to study. So obviously.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, I just endured great struggles. My 11th grade year, I lost my mom and my grandmother and grandfather. And I, took some time off of school, about 2 weeks off of school because I had to tend to family. So I was really in a place of, how do I just exist in class and not cry? It was a very deep thing for me to go through. And my mom always valued education as well as my grandparents. And I remember those moments where I would be in the cross-campus transfer office, trying to see what grades I need to transfer into engineering. And even the people in the office were like, no, it's never going to happen. You're not going to get in. I remember calling my grandparents and saying, hey, I'm not going to make it. I'm just going to drop out. I'm just going to go to a different school, or I'm just going to join the Air Force. I had plan A, B, C of what will Jasmine do if she doesn't get into the College of Engineering? And my grandparents were like, we don't care if you don't graduate until you're 30. Keep going. We don't care. You're going to do it. So I didn't give up after they passed because education was so important for them. I was a first generation, college student to go away to college. So I felt that I would be dishonoring them if I was to just leave. So that fueled me. Fast forward to my 4th year of college, I was working still, but in the aerospace department as a work study student. So, I was able to, meet the professors and, actually get more friends in the aerospace department. Networking in college is a whole nother thing. So,
Yeah.
I was able to eventually get into the program, but by the time I got in, it was time to graduate. So I was taking engineering classes, you know, and I was a 5th-year student. So I was taking engineering classes the entirety of my collegiate career, but I was in LS&A for like 4 years. So by the time I finally transferred, it was like, oh, you got like a semester left. So, you know, it just kind of goes to show that, like, don't give up, even though people are, you know, betting against you. And I understand like how statistics work, but I mean, if you really want to go after something, I mean, for me, it was like, I'd rather try and fail, like, than to not know. And that's kind of just been how I've handled a lot of situations in my life. But I would say that's probably like my biggest accomplishment, because there were so many things that happened to me just for me to be an aerospace engineer. So graduated in 2015 from the University of Michigan with the aerospace engineering degree, and that is like my biggest. I think that's my biggest accomplishment, and yeah, that's my that's how I got started.
That is super inspiring. I mean, to overcome all of what you were just saying. Also, definitely want to reinforce that standardized testings do not dictate how you will do in any field.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I feel like it's those standardized tests are just one of those things where like you just got to get it done. Like I had to take it twice too, and it's just because you have to do it to get into college, but it's like it doesn't matter. Like that doesn't reflect if you're good at something, or that's just somebody's standard, and it's yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
But
it
I
is.
also wanted to bring up we've talked about, like Shireen and I, the importance of advisors and like having someone in college that is rooting for you, because like you said, if you have someone that's just like, oh, like, you know, you might as well just continue down this path because this other one isn't right for you. Like that's crazy. Like I just, to tell someone where you can clearly see when someone's passionate about something, so to tell them like, oh, you know, that's like, don't take the hard route, like that's just, yeah, that's crazy to me. And I think like that's something that we want to share with everyone else going through this, where it's just like, you know, I guess, yeah, make sure you have someone in your core, and make sure you have someone that's cheering you on, because it's just like, yeah, just because someone's like, hey, this isn't for you, doesn't mean you can't do it.
And just echoing that, the advisor who told me, like, she told me to just do a general studies degree, get a job at Target and make 40K a year. Like that's what she told me to do, instead of trying to you know, accomplish my goal as an engineer. So this was an advisor who looked like me. And then for the chair of the aerospace department to say, hey, take a class and see how you do, he did not look like me. So it just, to me, is sometimes those who you would expect to be in your corner may not always be the person you expect. So, you know, just putting into reference of just, it may not be the person that you think is going to be your cheerleader, your advocate. It may be somebody who you would have never expected. And my advisor from the aerospace department, the chair, he's also the person who wrote my letter of recommendation to get into grad school. So, you know, that's somebody who was a big cheerleader in my life. And, you know, it just kind of goes to show, at least try and make the effort to achieve what you want, because you never know who's going to root for you.
Yeah, or that like our paths aren't all the same, and even the advisors telling you, okay, you have to take this class and you have to do this and you have to do all these things in a certain way. Like that's not necessarily true. Like if you go directly to the aerospace chair and you're like, this is what I want to do, like how do I get here? They might have, you know what, take this test or take this class, and you could do it your own way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
tell us what your day-to-day is in your field.
So my day-to-day is a little different than maybe your like design engineer or your stress engineer, because it's you know, more of a leadership facing role. and it's more about like initiatives and policy, I guess, than the actual hands-on engineering. So day-to-day changes so much. I can tell you that I'm working on a project to reduce the cost of high power computing for analysis. And we're trying to get our engineers to use a computing cloud or a cloud infrastructure instead of like a server. And me as a project engineer, I'm doing a lot of the, facilitation of going from point A to point B, but I'm not crunching the numbers specifically. So I'm like overseeing those type of initiatives. Another example is a business transformation initiative where the organization has to be more nimble and like kind of change their portfolio and do things differently to win business. So I'm the person that's making sure all the leaders are doing the essential changes that they need to do to ensure that they can be prepared for future business that's going to be different than what we've had before. So it's a lot of project type work. Another example is engineering synergies, where I work specifically, I'm just one of 5 business units. It's called Aerostructures, and we work on like nacelle and thrust reverser type of structures, but we're also moving into like flight controls, missiles and airborne. And there are, 4 other business units that work on different parts of the plane. So there are some things that we can all leverage the different business units as far as like resources and test house, that type of thing. So I'm doing like a lot of cost reduction for engineering synergy. So, if 2 different business units are going to the same test house, I'm someone that will help them with finding, a lower cost for that same work that, the 2 test house are doing. The 2 business units are doing, and making sure that we're both taking credit for, the same contract, or we're both getting the same results, or we're reducing the cost by using one contract instead of like several different ones. So things like that, any type of like flow down that the VP wants to do, I make sure that it's done. We do a thing called town halls. So any type of like new business that's happening, any type of new policy changes, things like that. So I'm like the person that makes sure that communication is flowed down and everybody knows what's going on. So it's very different than like, a typical engineering role, but it's a lot of visibility on like how the business works.
Yeah, and that has to be really cool in itself. You're getting all sides of engineering at that point.
Yeah, it is really cool to kind of see how the sausage is made. But, it's just so high level sometimes that sometimes I miss like the job I had before, where I worked with suppliers on certain components, and I had to make sure that the suppliers would test the components correctly so we meet the requirements of our customers. And that was more like, focused on, specific component, and that was all I had to do. So sometimes I miss being more hands-on with like things like that, instead of being like, kind of this liaison for multiple things.
So what you're doing now, when you were in college, did you have any sort of class or were you exposed to this kind of job while you were in college?
Like the job I have now?
Yeah.
Not specifically. Not the job I have now. It's more like communication and like project-based work. But the job I had before, definitely. We had to do a lot of labs in college, like, just teamwork, testing parts and writing a test report for it, writing a procedure for it, really understanding like technical writing. And I had to do a lot of that in my previous job, but not so much in this job per se. But everything builds upon itself. I feel like the point of college is to build that foundation. A lot of times people aren't going to do exactly what they were doing in college in their actual career, but there'll be some elements that, are, throughout their career. Like you have to take, as an aerospace engineer, you have to take thermodynamics, you have to take aerodynamics, you have to take mechanics of materials. So it's just understanding those concepts when it comes to certain questions like, is this going to work? And you have to think about the principles that you learned in college to be able to like answer questions like that in your career. And I'm not really asking those type of questions in my current job, but I mean, my role before, it was more so like I had to have that foundation to be able to be a competent engineer.
I'm sure, like what you just said, I'm sure that what you've learned in college does play a huge role in your current position, though. Like, I mean, it has to help, facilitate your day-to-day, like you're saying, making sure that what you're reading or what they're providing as, to move forward with will actually work. I'm sure that plays into it, right?
I guess I just feel like I'm not as technical right now in this particular role, but like, you're right. There are elements from school that like have helped me with this role that I'm just not seeing like the direct correlation, but in some way I had to, understand certain things to be able to be in this role just overall.
Definitely.
I think that getting an education and learning, you're really learning like problem solving. So like every class you take, you're learning how to solve problems, which you might not solve the exact problem you were doing in school, but you'll solve just problems in general.
And that's a good point, Alexis. And I've heard this a few times, like engineering school like teaches you how to think. And a lot of people appreciate engineers for like their problem solving skill set because it's like problems are solved in any type of industry, right? You don't have to be an engineer to solve any problem, but having that background does help you with the, like problem solving aspect. And that also kind of alludes to, why I feel that engineers make great business people. And a lot of people think that overall, because it's just the mindset that engineers learn from school to like problem solve just in general.
Alexis, do you want to take the next question?
Yeah, I guess we can go with, what's been a big academic or career obstacle for you? I know you've said a couple already, but I guess what is one that you feel like, I did it?
Well, I talked about the cross-campus transfer one. That was a huge obstacle, but continuing on with those obstacles, I did not graduate with a 3.0 GPA. And that was essentially the minimum you needed to get a job. Like that's what, companies looked for, and they looked for internship experience. And there was always a risk that I realized that, hey, I might get into engineering, but I may not get a job. And I went to the NSBE conference that year, National Society of Black Engineers, and it's a big career fair. And I had my resume, and I actually saw, at the time our company was called United Technologies, I saw that they were doing a hospitality suite, and I actually got a call back, but I never received like a call for an interview. Like they do phone screenings, and they usually invite you to the hospitality suite, which is like, a way for, recruiters to like get to know you and things like that. So I knew that there was a hospitality suite. I didn't necessarily get an invitation, but when I was physically at the conference and I saw, the room where the hospitality suite was, I kind of just said, I'm going to just go in there and see what I can learn. And I was faced with a recruiter who saw my GPA, and he was like, no, probably not. And when I did the phone screening, they gave me the name of the hiring manager. So I had a name. So when I faced the recruiter on my resume, he's like, no, don't think so. I'm like, hey, can you introduce me to, the guy's name was Dean, who was the hiring manager. I'm like, hey, can you just introduce me to Dean anyway? And he's like, I don't know if he's going to be interested in talking to you, but I guess, sure. So he introduced me to Dean, and Dean saw my resume. He asked me a couple questions, like he was quizzing me basically. And he's like, okay, we'll set up an interview tomorrow. So I had an interview with Dean, and he asked me to explain my GPA. So at the time, there was an article written about me, just kind of about the story that I told you guys about the cross-campus transfer and things like that. So I'm like, here, I hope that this article can kind of explain it a little bit better. And he saw that, and he gave me an on-site interview. So that was like a triumphant moment for me, because, I was faced with another, I don't think you're good enough type of barrier, but I just kind of persevered anyway, because I felt like I already got that far. I mean, I already snuck into the hospitality suite. So I'm like, what else I got to lose? So
making your own path. I love it.
So I got the interview on site, and at the time they call it Super Day, where they invite all the NSBE candidates to meet other hiring managers or people who would be their potential managers. It was more like they're matching you to different teams. So I got the job, but it was just the fact that, I could have just stopped at the guy who said, no, you don't have a 3.0, you got to go. So I don't know, I guess just one, me getting into engineering, that was like a huge accomplishment, but two, being able to secure a job, like that was extremely stressful. And I felt like it was the full circle, thing of, hey, I actually did it. It's kind of like how great is it to have an aerospace engineering degree if you can't really get a job, right? So being able to secure that was definitely like one of my highlights of my accomplishments.
Do you think that, or I guess like, how do you keep pushing yourself? You're faced with all of these obstacles and you seem like, I'm just going to get it. But how, I guess, do you think that's something that was instilled into you by your parents or your family? Or do you think that like you just have that personality of like you said, I'd rather try and fail than, but I guess where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do feel like it was instilled in me from my family. Like, my grandparents, they were very hardworking, humble individuals. And like I said, I was always an inquisitive kid, and they never really like stopped me from asking questions. They never really like told me what my limitations were. They just always said, yep, keep going. Yep, keep going. And I really feel like the conversation I had with my grandparents about, we don't care if you don't graduate until you're 30, like do it anyway, was always just like a driving force. And I mean, like my grandmother, she's from the South. She used to work as a maid. She didn't have past the high school education. My grandfather, he worked in the shop. He was a Navy veteran. So just seeing like the progression of my family was really like a driving force as well, because like they always believed in me, but they never tried to like stop me. Like they never tried to say, you have to do this, you have to do that. They were proud of me with whatever, but anytime that I felt like I wanted to give up, they were just like, no, keep going. Like I remember telling my mom about like, oh, I'm not doing so good in this class, I'm really stressed out or whatever. And she was like, I was a teenage mom, and like I had to deal with you and your brother in college. She went to University of Michigan Flint, like a local school. So she was just like, I had to deal with you and your brother, and I did it. So it was kind of like, oh, well, I guess I gotta keep going. And not to say that that's like the best approach, but it definitely made me feel like I was privileged that I had like, I was standing on the backs of giants who like have been through a lot of things way more significant than me in my lifetime. And it felt like I needed to, progress and like challenge myself. So I really feel like it was a family dynamic. And, like I said, my family was always, they always instilled the importance of education. So it just felt like I was doing a disservice if I didn't keep trying.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that, yeah, it just goes back to having that support system and, whoever you just, yeah. But then I hope that, either we can instill this support to the community that we want to foster, and just, yeah, just having that support there is so valuable.
Yeah. And friends as support systems too. I mean, it does get incredibly like lonely and just mentally draining to feel like you have to go it alone. And I had friends in college that really helped me. I have friends who are engineers now, and women in STEM fields who inspire me every day. So developing that community of people who can support you is very essential, because like you guys cheer each other on, and like you can just relate to each other, and that makes the road a little bit less difficult to bear.
To that point, finding that community, was that something that just happened when you switched into the aero space community? Like when you started signing up for classes and taking those classes that were specific to what you wanted, is that where you found your community, or did you actively have to search, like you were saying, the networking?
So there were programs at U of M or University of Michigan that were like geared towards minority students. And there was this department called like Center for Educational Diversity or Minority Education or something like that. And they encourage students to, get involved with NSBE, National Society of Black Engineers. So like I pretty much was connected to like all the Black engineers of University of Michigan. And, we would have programs like, how to raise your GPA, study sessions, how to prepare for the NSBE conference to get interviews. Like there was a lot of programming that really helped like Black students succeed. So I had that surrounding tribe, but also I had a friend who was doing aerospace with me, who was like, we really leaned on each other for everything. So I met her around the time that I was transferring. So I would say like being in the aerospace classes, that was when I got more connected with her. But then I did have to like kind of force myself to get to know my other classmates, because, you work with each other for labs, you got to do projects together, things like that. And, there were students that had their own like informal study sessions that were just like, all hanging out and all like getting good grades. So I wanted to be a part of that group too. So I really had to like, just network more and get out of my comfort zone of like, kind of like the Black community that I was so familiar with, and start branching out to other people that can like help and can, are going through aerospace school too. So it was a little of both. Like there was definitely formal programming to get me acclimated to the environment and, help me succeed. But I had to definitely like force myself to go outside my comfort zone.
Yeah, I think that's good to hear as somebody who's starting out, definitely, because I know not a lot of people think that, you attend class and you find those friends, and it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you have to actively participate in groups and ask for the invitation to be included. But yeah.
And I took advantage of like any type of resource that could help. Like I stayed in the dorm called Wise Women in Science and Engineering. Like it was called Wise Residential Program. So like I stayed in a dorm my freshman and sophomore year with a community of girls who were doing science and engineering. So even little things like that, just, you know, being in different groups that, you know, have that intersectionality of what I was doing was beneficial because it seemed like, okay, there's like a resource for everything, right? Like I can find a tutor if I need to. I can, you know, work with this team if I need to. I can switch classes with somebody, or, you know, I can sign up for the same section as somebody that I know. So I just took advantage of any like resource that could help me succeed.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that sets you up for everything to follow.
Yeah.
Let's see. So next question is, how is your field different from when you started to now?
So I was hired as a diversity hire. I felt that I worked for a company that, you know, put emphasis on diversity and inclusion. And I immediately got involved with employee resource groups where, you know, they're groups that are designed for like, you know, different minority groups or different types of people to get more acclimated to the work environment. So like I was a part of the African American Forum, you know, started building my tribe, you know, from a corporate standpoint there. And I've been in the industry for 5 years, and I can't say that I've seen a huge increase in diversity and inclusion. I have seen, you know, more of a push for gender parity, which is like fantastic, but I don't feel that I've seen a lot of like women of color in a lot of spaces. And that prompted me to want to create Greater Than Tech, because it felt like there weren't a lot of avenues for girls who look like me to be in the spaces that I was in. So it kind of felt like, you know, who's gonna help the Jasmine LeFlore who's 7 and loves airplanes to get to this moment? And it kind of felt like, okay, there's a gap here. So, you know, has the industry changed from an aggregate standpoint? I like not that much, but like there has been a lot of like vocal emphasis on the need for like gender parity and for just diversity and inclusion in general. But in terms of like seeing the numbers progress and increase, I haven't really seen that too much. And I've been a part of like, you know, the diversity team for a very long time. And I hope that it gets better, and I'm doing what I can to, you know, create a better pipeline for that. But I have not seen a significant change.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the reason we started Defiant Science, is to show the world, you know, women in STEM are not one kind of woman. They are several different kinds of women. And it's very important that that is included in the workforce as well. So we commend you for what you're doing as well with your nonprofit.
Thank you. Likewise.
Yeah, we have kind of latched onto that saying, like, you can't be what you can't see. And I think that that's more important now than ever. And yeah, like you said, 7-year-old Jasmine needs someone to look up to that looks like her, that just reinforces that she can do that and she can be in the place that she wants to be in. So yeah, I think, I guess going off that, what do you think the biggest hurdle that women face in STEM today?
That's a good question, and I feel like there's more than one answer. Something that like immediately sticks out to me is just confidence. You know, there are a lot of surveys and studies that speak to how like women, we tend to try to fill like 100% of the requirements before we apply to a job, and men only need like 30% of the requirements, and they're like, oh, I'm qualified. So I think just being confident in spaces that don't really represent us. And I dealt with that myself. I feel like I still deal with that where, I could know that I'm correct and I have the right answer, but because I'm not exuding the same level of confidence of a male counterpart, he would be the one that sounds like he's correct because he has like the confidence behind him instead of like someone who is like, yeah, I know the answer. And, I constantly have to, like show all the validation of like how I come to the conclusion, opposed to someone who's like, coming in there like they run the world and just don't have to show much, that they don't have to prove their results. So to get past that though, like I've worked with, I've been to a few seminars and I've seen, like a YouTube TED Talk from Amy Cuddy a few years ago, just about like, it's not fake it till you make it, it's fake it till you become it. And, there are things that women can do, like the whole power pose thing where, like before an interview, before a big meeting, you just kind of pose like Wonder Woman and, that like creates a level of confidence. So like those are little things that I do, but I feel like a lot of the reason why people make decisions and how they move is just like confidence in general. So I think for women, especially in engineering or just STEM in general, when you're not really the one that's fully represented in the room, or you're not the majority represented, that already like gives you a layer of self-consciousness where it's like, everybody's looking at me, everybody wants me to speak. And, you're like trying to process how to come off so much. Like you don't even like, I feel like sometimes men, they just speak. They don't think about how it comes off. And I feel like we spend a lot of time processing things and, is it the right tone? Is my voice too high? Am I saying it rudely? Do I sound like, someone who's entitled? Like we go through a lot of, psychological like processing before we even speak. And then next thing you know, it's like, change the subject, like you missed your time.
Yeah.
So I've struggled with that. Like it's definitely one of the biggest things that I think women face just in general, but also in like situations where they're the minority.
Yeah, and I think it just takes time, or it takes those little victories to be like, okay, just that reassurance of like, I can do this, and like I've done it before, so I can do it again the next time you're faced with that. But I think it's good to hear that we all kind of face that and are all, doing our Wonder Woman pose before we go somewhere, because it's true. Like you just have to have the confidence to like own the space. And I think that's important.
Regarding that TED Talk, can you send me the link so I can post it along with the video? Yeah, definitely. I would really like to hear what you do for fun, like when you're not at your job. Like what is Jasmine? What do you like? What do you do? Your favorite food?
Loaded question, because I feel like I like so many different things. Like I always say my hobby is to try new hobbies. Like I'm always just, open to try new things. But what I've been doing recently is like just going to the beach and reading a book and relaxing and, journaling a little bit more and trying to be more like health conscious. So like working on fitness and, running, things like that. Favorite food? Loaded question, because I I love food. Like I'm a foodie. What I've been eating a lot of lately is I mean, California is like taco capital. So, I'm always running to get some California tacos. That's like, my favorite like fast food, basically. Sometimes I like to cook. It depends on what mood I'm in. And when I cook, it's just like a new recipe that I would find. I consider myself a flexitarian because I am very flexible in how I eat. Sometimes I'm eating vegetarian-like, sometimes I'm eating very vegan, sometimes I'm, a full-on carnivore. So it just depends. I feel like everything in moderation is good. So all things, everything.
Oh, tacos. I miss California. I need to get down there and have some more tacos, definitely.
Tacos and the beach.
Yeah, the beach would be nice. It's way too hot here in Arizona. Okay, so I guess let's start wrapping this up. I mean, we don't want to take up too much of your time today. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you started down the path that you are on now?
I guess I wish I knew how much I would have to like be confident and assert myself in a lot of different moments. Like, it's called a professional clapback where, you kind of have to like stand up for yourself. And I wish that I knew that that would be my reality in corporate America, that I always had to like, kind of speak up for myself, and question a lot of things that people say to make, the environment a little bit more like inclusive. So I wish I was like a pro in that coming into my job. Like, I feel like when I first started, I felt like a lot of people felt that I was very unfamiliar, and, there were a lot of questions. I felt like people saw me as a dog walking on its hind legs because I just looked different than like my peers and my counterparts and my coworkers in general. So I wish that I knew that like the work environment could be a little like isolating, and to not let that kind of like deter me, but to just have that like have that tenacity in like being aggressive and like shutting things down as soon as possible.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like advocating for yourself in the workplace is something that you have to learn as you go on, and nobody tells you to do so beforehand. And yeah, no, I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And it's definitely like a muscle you have to develop because, I mean, you don't really expect like the world to just be so like, rude or ignorant. Like you expect everyone to come from a good place, which a lot of people are. They just don't really understand what's going on, or they don't understand different viewpoints. So it's something that I've gotten a lot better at, but it took time for me to get to the point where like I'm shutting things down quickly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's hard just going into a new space where this is your first time at this job and you're like, okay, somebody said something to me that I'm not okay with, but like you're just a newbie and what are you supposed to say? But at the same time, yeah, you have to learn to advocate for yourself and speak up.
Yeah, very true.
Before we let you go, we would love to hear what your proudest achievement is.
Did I speak about them already?
Well, if you've already said it, that's fine. Let's just lay it out there. I mean, I'd love to like hear it. Like, my proudest achievement is, because I feel like a lot of people don't say that. They live through them, but they never actually, put words to that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I would have to say like completing my aerospace degree, just because like that was a grueling and trying phase in my life that I like had no I had no idea that I would actually get through. And like the fact that being an aerospace engineer was my childhood dream, feels like I really accomplished something that my like childhood self would really be proud of. And me accomplishing that really set the tone for like how I operated in the world, after. So I would say like, really being true to who I am in that moment was like my biggest accomplishment, because like I didn't give up and I like betted on myself, and I used every lever possible to achieve that goal. And it feels like if I can do that for aerospace engineering degree, like I'm only going to continue to climb and like kind of be gritty and like achieve my next huge accomplishment. So I would say that's my proudest one.
Well, your story has definitely been an inspiring one, I must say. STEM is very lucky to have you. And I'm glad that you persevered. And I'm glad that you were here today to tell us your story that we could share to the other 7-year-old Jasmines of the world.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Is there anything else you would like to say to young women that are thinking about, the field that you are in, or, were in before the position you're in now?
I guess I would just say, like, don't give up on yourself. Um, Everybody's story and background and why is different. So just like know your why in terms of what you're trying to accomplish. Some people have a why that is from their parents telling them you need to do this, but if that's not what you really want to do, like stick to what you're passionate about and what you really want, and you will be happier with the results, because it's something that is really something that you really care about. And a lot of times you hear people say like, if this is a job that you would work for free, then you found your passion. So think about what you would want to do for the rest of your life, even if you didn't get paid, and think about if your steps align to that. So don't give up on yourself, and know your why when you're trying to accomplish something.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And
Yeah.
we could all, I think, and I was gonna say, I think that's something that we have to keep like reassuring ourselves, or keep, reminding ourselves like, this is why we're doing this and this is why it's important. So we just got to keep going.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. We cannot wait to share this video. We will definitely post your social media links when we're posting the video, and I'll also include the TED Talk that you referenced earlier on. We just want to say thank you again for joining us. And yeah, of course. We hope to hear from you after you graduate from your MBA and your grad degree. We'd love to hear how that goes, and what your next steps are when that happens. Good luck with everything. You don't need that though. I mean, you take the reins and run with it. So
Thank you so much. This was great, and I look forward to speaking to you ladies soon.
Yeah. We'll also be doing the Greater Than Tech interview with you later on this year. We're excited to hear about that.
Awesome.